Hey, welcome to another episode of Grit in the Wild podcast. I'm your host, Adam Short,
And I'm your co-host, Melissa Short.
and together we're here to talk about toxic faith, deconstruction, high control groups, healing from trauma, and lots of other stuff that kind of fits in between those subjects. And so it's been a couple weeks, right, since our last episode. A lot has happened since then. I think I can say I've taken a little bit of a step back, especially from X and even some of the other interactions I've had that I normally have on a day-to-day basis. I've just tried to take some space because it was kind of for me it was getting to be a lot. And really the cumulative impact of the past 15 months is just it kind of just got to a point where it took a real toll, or at least I realized that the toll was taken. So I've kind of taken some space here past couple weeks, or maybe week, I guess. But now I guess we're back. Did you take a break?
No, for me, it was the opposite. I felt like I kind of jumped in more just because, for those of you I'm not sure, no, I started a BSSM alumni process group.
And
What?
what is
So
and
basically,
yeah,
it was for
BSSM is what?
Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry, which is the ministry school that we were a part of in Redding, California, a part of Bethel Church. And it became very apparent that there was a need for people like us who are right deconstructing, re-examining our faith, like reconstructing just the full right all this stuff, re-examining our beliefs, and are like seeing the stuff and going like something's not right here. And so I started a separate BSSM process group for people who are in that place, because the main one was more like you need to have the toxic positivity and the culture of honor stuff, and you can't say anything negative. So it was like people were feeling gaslit and not able to have like a safe place to talk about these things and process their experience. So,
And this
yeah.
kind of just to place it in context with the chronological story recently that's happened, right? So we had a lot happen what in January, kind of even into early February around Shawn Bolz.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then Bethel released a statement, and I can't remember the exact date, but I feel like it's been a couple weeks now since Bethel released it, publicly released a statement about Shawn. I've got plenty of thoughts. I know you have plenty of thoughts about what we think about that statement, but the fact is they did release a public statement. And then it seems like, and I'm not in the official sanctioned BSSM group, even though I could be, I'm just not in there. But am I correct in saying that when the Shawn story became sort of more public mainstream, i.e., Bethel released a statement, did you find that some of the dissent, I don't want to say dissent, was more loud, but was it more like people were allowed to voice more opinion in the group, or did you feel like that changed at all, or what? What was your take?
No, it was a little bit different because actually the Bethel didn't actually make a statement about Sean until just what, 2 weeks
Yeah,
ago.
that's what I'm saying. It was like 2 weeks
So this
ago, plus or
this the
minus.
stuff that happened in the group was prior to that. It was when um I'm drawing a blank on her name right now.
Hartley, yeah.
No,
Jubilee. Oh
Jubilee,
yeah, yeah.
thank you. Sorry, Jubilee, if you're listening.
Jubilee.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Jubilee came out and shared. So that was initially, but I think what felt like a lot was we had, there was a lot of hubbub and yeah, a lot of noise, and students and people were like, why isn't Bethel saying anything about the
yeah,
Sean thing? Please make a statement. They were being really silent about it. Chris Valentin was mentioning, his thoughts in the comment threads
yeah.
on Facebook and social media, but wouldn't make a public statement. It was a little odd. It's like, why are
Right.
you're able to talk about it in these comments, but you're actually not able to make a statement about it. So they finally made a statement. And I think the same week is when IHOP released, or not IHOP,
Yes,
but
that's right. It was all that week. That was a crazy
yeah,
week. Like, cause the, yeah, I remember this now. It all came back to
yeah,
me. It was Tuesday, February 3rd,
good memory.
right?
I don't know.
When, and we knew we were all gearing up for the Cocoon slash, well, it wasn't the Cocoon didn't actually do the report. They facilitated. It was Firefly, which is an abuse investigating or agency or firm. Anyway, that was slated to be released publicly Tuesday, February 3rd. And, there had been so much hubbub about the Shawn stuff that had been hitting the fan and really reaching a fever pitch. Like I'll just give a shout out to, and I know I've said this before, but the Minor Prophets, John Mark Baker and Jeff Simons doing an awesome job over there, as well as I feel like I've watched so much stuff. I feel like the Remnant Radio talked about it. Blaze and Christina have been talking about it. Many of us on Twitter have been talking about it. And it's like all of that stuff and then of course Jubilee was the big one where she came publicly
Yeah,
and
she was
shared her
kind of the first
story.
one. Yeah.
Right. But all that kind of combined, and we've been chugging along here waiting on the IHOP report since what? I guess it was commissioned back in September 2024. So all of us that have been involved in the IHOPKC sort of fallout and trying to recover from that, we knew that the report's coming, right? But then it's like Bethel just like shot in like last minute and rode in and released their statement. Whether it was coincidental or planned to
Yeah.
be the same day as the report,
Was it the
that
same day?
it was the
Oh
same
my
day. It
gosh.
was
Yeah.
1 hour. I remember this. I
Oh,
remember this all. It's all coming back to me. I remember you actually saw that Bethel released a statement. You told me it was just after 7
that's
p.m. Eastern
right.
time.
Yes.
And then we
Okay.
knew that Ron Cantor had said that the IOPKC Firefly report was due out around 8 p.m. Alyssa DeGraff, Susan Tuma, and Ron Cantor were all telling us, hey, the IOPKC report's coming out at 8 p.m. Well, 7 p.m. hits and you got the Bethel report, right? Or not report, Bethel statement about Shawn. And then 8 p.m. plus or minus Eastern time, you had the Firefly report come out. And then to add insult to injury, like talk about a triple whammy for me because I was in all three of those ecosystems. You had another Morningstar
That's right. It's
lawsuit
three ministries
broke,
in one day.
and that now since then they've got a couple more. I think there are 5 lawsuits, if I'm counting correctly. But anyway, all that happened the same day, and you have to wonder, like, is any of this was this coincidental or was it planned? Were people talking behind the scenes? I don't know, but it's very uncanny. The word that came to my mind was this is very uncanny that the three meccas of hypercharismania all had such major stuff happen in one day. And a lot of it centered around communication to the general public.
Yeah, with Morningstar though, they didn't come out and make a statement, right? It was more like the news made
I don't
I
remember.
don't
They
yeah.
may or may not. I don't remember right
Yeah.
now. Yeah. I don't know.
I want to say something, yeah, about that. So we're telling you, why are you telling us all this? I think it was
Yeah.
just like to reference that there's been a lot that's happened for those of us who are in this like hyper charismatic kind of new apostolic reformation or kind of coming out of that to like see all these ministries and all these men that we've followed for years and seeing like all this stuff come out, right? Like some of it really, really horrific. I mean, all of it's bad. It's all
Right.
really
It's all
bad.
bad.
But
None of it's
but
good.
like shock is like a normal like emotion, shock, like whoa, like
Mhm.
and I think too what you were speaking to, like sometimes the need to step back, like
Mhm.
our nervous systems can
Yeah.
only handle so much. And
Yeah.
right when you take in a steady diet, I know for me, working with trauma, and then I'm also recovering from my own trauma and spiritual abuse, like I have to step back too sometimes. Like it can be really easy when you're in all this stuff and you're reading all these things and you're digging in and you can start to feel like the world is a really bad
Mm.
place and that there's only like ministers are bad and churches are bad and everybody's bad and it's just all evil
Yeah.
and so yeah, I think that like from a nervous system perspective it's like whoa, like my body and soul and mind are overwhelmed and I need to like take a breather and remember that
There's
there's
still
still good in life.
kind people. I know. I know for me, like one of the effects that I kind of have experienced from time to time, and especially, and there's more than just this, but I'll mention this. That week, I guess this was this past week, actually. It feels like in some ways it feels like months ago, but it was just this past week where I said I'm taking a break. It felt like I felt like every system inside of me had broken. Like
Mm,
I'm an accountant, so right now is the busiest season of the year for us because it's tax season. So I've got that on top of everything else. And I just felt like my whole system was shutting down. And then, but what was cool is, I mean, I guess there's a positive in this is taking a step back, as hard as it was to do that, um, I I was able to it was like the wheels inside were able to slow down long enough for
Yeah.
me to actually feel the abject, just gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching, soul-breaking grief.
Mm. Yeah.
Grief and like, "Oh my gosh, like this is." I even though I've said this so many times, we've been out of this movement for a long time. I remember thinking, "I want their tapes to stop,"
Mm.
in my
Yeah.
head. And I've done a lot of hard work, like, we've done it together, I've
Yeah.
worked with my therapist,
Yeah.
but the tapes
Yeah.
of the hyper control charismatic, groups, that those tapes are still running in my head, and so I guess my point on that is, like, complete overwhelm, but also, like, if you stop long enough, you see or you feel I hate that thumbs up that always comes up. You feel like you actually get a minute to hear yourself think for a
Yes.
second.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or not just hear yourself think, but like feel what's going on. And I mean, it's not that I don't live my daily life unaware of what I'm feeling. I'm just saying, like at a very deep level, that's kind of what was coming up there.
Yeah. Yeah. Like sometimes when we're in it and reading all this stuff and taking in news and taking in information and talking with people, like, yeah, it's busy, right? And then when you
Very
step
busy. Yeah.
back for a minute, it's like, yeah, the feelings come up, right? When we're still like the
Hmm.
emotion, the grief, the like what is happening, like the reality, right? Coming to grips with like accepting,
Yeah.
like,
This actually
yeah.
happened. And two, I think too, like with the Firefly report coming out, even though we all knew that this stuff was true because these brave
Mm,
victims and survivors have come out and shared their stories now publicly. Jane Doe, Deborah Perkins, Doe number one, was brave enough to share her name right around like
yeah,
shortly
that was a big
before
deal. Yeah.
the report came out. And we all knew this stuff was true, right?
Well,
Um,
maybe not. I don't know that
well,
everybody
when
did.
I say we all, I guess what I mean by we all is the we of us that have been trying to blow the whistle
Right.
and
Okay.
make sense of our own pain and our own abuse,
Yeah.
right? And then also advocate. So, um, we knew that it was true, but like to see it come out in a report in black and white from an independent investigator, it made it concrete in
Yeah.
an even deeper way. And I'll add, to watch Deborah share her story in her interview with Julie Royce was like, I don't know. It was the impact to hear that and watch that. This isn't just some random person here. This isn't just her name actually isn't Jane Doe. Her name is Deborah Perkins, and she's
Yeah.
a real person,
Yeah.
and she's a real victim of Mike Bickle, and that's that system. And I guess what I'm getting at is it solidified it even further and even deeper. So the solidification of this is happening simultaneously, albeit at different stages. IHOP is
Hmm.
much further along than Bethel in their, I guess, reckoning, if you will. Bethel, I feel like, is very much still nascent in sort of becoming aware that there are systemic problems.
Yeah. And what you just said made me think of some of like the things we were talking about. We kind of made notes about it, but what you just
Right. It
said, I
did.
feel like that's a great segue.
Yeah.
What you were talking about, you knew these things to be true,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and then to see it actually come out in a report, right? 17 accounts from just Mike Bickle of horrific
17 people.
17 people
More.
that have come forward, only that have come forward, right? We know there's more.
Right.
We know there's more.
Yeah.
People in this community know other people that have just, they're either not aware or they're still under the manipulation and the control and they're not able to, or they just don't want to. It's actually, I want to say, like, not all victims want to come forward. And you
Right.
can
And you
understand
you
that.
do understand,
Yeah.
like, it's
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like, to face that and
Yeah.
have to come to grips with like the big unknowns of who's going to come after me? What am I going to
Right.
lose?
Yeah.
Who am I going to lose? Do I want to go through
Mhm.
the re-traumatization again, right?
Yeah.
And I have to say for myself, like I've had to wrestle because I have not named the people publicly that harmed me.
Yeah.
And will I do that? I don't know. I can't answer that question as I sit here right now.
Yeah.
And I know you and I have dialogued at length on that subject.
Yeah.
And it's a hard one, and nobody can answer that except you yourself as a person.
Right.
And there's probably not a right or wrong answer. You know what I mean? It's what is the word? It's not amoral. What is it? Morally neutral, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's morally neutral because at the end of the day, a person that experienced harm gets to decide what the impact was.
Right. Yeah,
It's
they're the ones
not,
living with it. Yeah,
yeah, it's
absolutely.
not everybody else
Yeah.
who says, "Oh, well, this person's was worse, or this is better, or this was medium, or whatever."
Yeah. No, you don't. Yeah. No, I want to speak to that for a minute. That's kind of going off subject, but like it
Yeah,
is on subject. Like, yeah, trauma is about the impact it had on the person. So it doesn't matter. It's not about what happened. Like, oh, well, I went through something worse and I was fine. So you should be okay. Like, that's not how it works. Trauma impacts an individual, like physiologically. Like, there's a brain impact, there's a body impact, there's an emotional impact. And so the person living with the impact is the one that decides that,
right.
we don't actually get to look at somebody's trauma or pain and say, oh, it really wasn't that bad, or you shouldn't feel like it was traumatic. Like, no, that's not actually how it works. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, the victims, the one is living with the pain, yeah, they have their own process, and we actually don't get to define that for them,
Yeah.
you know?
Hmm.
Yeah. And they're healing. And that healing, like you said, like healing can look like telling the story publicly. And
Yeah.
for some, the healing might be that they choose not to and they just want to move forward. And
Right.
there's, like you said, there's no right or wrong. It's very valid. Anyone's process is valid. Whatever process they go through to heal is their own, and it's
Yeah.
valid. Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, that's some raw stuff right there,
Yeah. Yeah.
but necessary to talk about.
Yeah, that report was hard.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, yeah, we knew it, but like reading the report,
Hmm.
I think it took me a day. I remember we read it and then the next day.
You finished it sooner than me. I think, didn't you finish it the night of?
Yeah, I
And
went through
then
it pretty quickly.
I think I got to about page 40, 42, the first that when the night it was released, but I had to pause and then read the rest the next
Uh,
day.
yeah. And I think for me, it was the next day. I just broke down. Remember, I just wept because I
Mm,
was like, I was so grieved,
yeah.
But anyways, yeah, it's out
Yeah,
there for those of you that want to look
it
at it.
is.
It's
Yeah.
heavy though. Like, it's heavy stuff, and be prepared to like,
Yeah, there's very specific and explicit references to the nature of the abuse that Mike, not just Mike, there were other unnamed, well, some are named and some are not, but you know, leaders at
yeah,
IOP who had people come forward and express
yeah,
harm that they
yes.
did.
Yeah, it wasn't just him, it was, like, systemic, it was so bad, but
Yeah.
and I think too, like, I always feel like I need to, like, want to help people understand, like, why are we talking about this, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, you just wanna have a gossip
Mudslinging
column
or
and mudsling and be an
yeah,
armchair
bash fest or
investigator." It's
whatever.
like, no,
Yeah.
like, for us, and I think a lot of other people, it's examining, right, these systems and looking at the behaviors and the patterns and going, oh my gosh, we missed that. And oh my gosh, yeah, these things were actually toxic, or that's actually not in the Bible, or that's manipulation, or that's abuse, that we are not taught in church to recognize these things. And
Mm,
so we have abuse and harm
yeah.
and unhealth and, things that are very unsafe and toxic going on, and nobody has any idea because we're pitched that it's normal. We're pitched this is spirituality, this is Christianity, and yet it's actually not. Like,
Can
it's
you think of an example of that?
not off the top of my
Yeah,
head,
I was just
but
curious.
yeah, just I don't know.
Hmm.
Anyways,
Well,
that's a whole thing that I
yeah,
didn't know we were gonna go down that road and talk about, but apparently we needed to.
yeah.
So
Well, where do we go from here? Do we want to hit some of these points we wrote
yeah, I
down, or?
think you kind of hit on the, feeling something was wrong. Did you feel like you
Yeah, I
did
mean, I
or
did, but there's more. I could say more about that. Yeah, I think what was it this morning? We were just talking, and I don't remember what we were specifically talking about, but it was like in my mind, I thought, well, yeah, we were talking about something along the lines of this, and realizing, oh, I felt all these things, and I thought all of these things, and I suspected that this stuff was true. I'm just talking in general right now, like general unhealth and toxicity and
yeah.
hyper control groups, right? Like, I feel something's wrong. But then you're like, oh, I want to believe that the people pulling the strings are good.
Yes. Yeah, that's what you mentioned.
I want to
Yeah.
believe that they're fundamentally good.
Yes, that was what you said earlier.
And so, what does that do to a human experience? I think for me, what it's done is you're holding cognitively a belief that I want to believe that the people I'm being led by are good people.
Yeah.
That they go home to their families at night, you know, the man kisses his wife and kids, they go to sleep and they wake up the next day and the man, pastor or whatever you want to call him, prophet or whoever goes back to the work and he's a good person. And he's not over here leading this double life or
Yeah.
attacking victims that come out with legitimate stories of harm. But holding that intention with what you feel about a system or a person that's leading, that to me is like nails on a chalkboard.
Yeah. It's
It's worse than that. But like, how do you hold those two things? And I think what we end up doing, because especially the hyper charismatic church is known for, hey, check your brain at the door, don't critically think, trust the leaders, blah, blah, blah. Well, then, okay, then I'm gonna check that at the door, and I must be the one I'm feeling something's off with this, or I'm having just a bad day. And then you stack up enough bad days in a couple few years' time, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, no worries, I'll just step over that. And
yeah.
matter of fact, it's actually baked into the system, isn't it? Because how often have we heard that we need to step over our
Oh
offense?
my gosh, yes.
We
And
need
it
to step over our fence. And like again, it's my problem as the listener. I'm offended, so I need to step over it. And what I've realized now is actually one of the tools of brainwashing.
yeah, mind control. And it also puts responsibility, all the responsibility is back on the listener, the follower, the congregant, right? The employee, whoever it is.
Yeah, whoever's following. Yeah,
One thing you mentioned, you talked about how that's built into the framework, like step over your offense. Oh my gosh, how much do we hear that at Bethel? And then another thing, I saw someone post about this the other day and I had forgotten. We need to see the gold in everybody. Oh
that was a
my
big
gosh.
that was a big one at Bethel.
And see, it sounds really good,
It does.
okay?
Yeah, it does
Okay,
sound
do we
good.
want to go around and see the bad in people? No. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it is. But you know what? Is that actually what we're asked to do? But you know what I'm saying? Like, I, what this is making me think of, and I don't mean to like
No, you're
steal your
fine.
train of thought, but
I've been talking up a storm over here, so go ahead.
yeah, but it's like on the same wavelength here of what you're saying is, right? Actions and words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And okay, like believe the best of everyone. Like, okay, I can want to believe the best of everybody, but if they're telling me one thing and doing another, that's a problem. Like, that's actually not good character. Like, the Bible, if we're following the Bible, is like whatever your standard, like, that's not good fruit, is what it
Yeah.
says. And so, like, I don't know. Do you have anything you want to say about
Well,
that?
I was just gonna say, even set the Bible aside for a minute. I mean,
Yeah.
just any
Yeah.
regular
Yes.
person can listen to a leader behind a podium on a stage in front of a camera, whether it's a politician, church leader, business leader, whoever, people can really sniff out the BS. People can tell. It's like, hey, that guy up there, he's saying some junk that's like, yeah, that's all smoke and mirrors.
But the problem is they're not seeing the BS because
What do
they're
you
told,
mean?
like you're saying people can see the BS. Like I think they
I
might,
guess what I mean is
yeah.
when I say BS, I'm talking about the duplicity, right?
Oh, okay.
Meaning, let's say I'm that leader and I'm
Yeah.
behind the camera and I'm pitching and perpetuating a belief system that, hey, this is a safe place. You know, we're a great place, and we I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But like behind the closed doors and privately and everything, they're leading this harmful life. I think that the average person, um, I'm going to contradict myself in a second, but I think the average person can sniff that.
I don't know though. I think we've been really
We
deceived.
have been
I would have
deceived,
never
but
thought that about Mike Bickle, right?
I
Because
know,
everybody
true,
said on
true,
the surface he was just
yeah.
this godly image, or this person who did all these wonderful things, and then no one had any idea.
So I guess I'm not really talking about that as much
Okay.
as how I'm trying to articulate this. I guess what I'm saying is people in general can sense if somebody's blowing smoke.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
not saying that we can't be deceived or we can't be fooled or whatever. Obviously, we all were
Yeah.
by Mike, but I don't know. I feel like I didn't really explain that well, but maybe it made sense to somebody.
No, I think I'm tracking with you now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're like whatever. Yeah, I was trying to look at our other
Yeah, we're
notes.
just talking about you feel like something's wrong cognitively. You think you're the problem.
Yeah. I
And
think
then you were talking about future faking, or actually you were talking about hope, like pot of gold stuff.
yeah,
Like there's
false
this
hope.
future, yeah.
False hope. And I think just going back to the, statements like believe the best and like all these things we're taught, like they sound really good, but they actually create harm because we are to look at people's character. We are to look at their actions. And it's not unloving or unkind to be like, okay, I love this person and care about this person and respect this person. But the truth is their actions are showing that they're actually not doing, you know what I mean? Like they're actually not
Right. Yeah.
doing stuff that's good. They're harming people, they're hurting people. And like
Yeah.
we're told that that's not okay, this is how it works. As soon as you actually are honest about somebody, then you're quickly like, oh, but I need to see the best. So you like bypass yourself. And that actually enables people who are doing harm to continue doing it because you're not going to confront them because you believe it's judgmental or you believe that you're supposed to see the gold. And I
Mhm.
think the same with like, yeah, I was trying to remember the line of thinking around the false hope. I just felt like looking back at our time at Bethel and in this movement, there's so much false hope given, like
Yeah.
stringing you along. And like, I think some of the things we've talked about were like around finances and like
Yeah.
your dreams coming true. And I
Yeah.
think what happens is like we're drawn in, it sounds really good to us, right? Like, who doesn't want hope? I think hope is good. I think, without hope, it's hard to have motivation and be excited about life. And
Mhm.
so I think it's good, but I feel like false hope is like hope in certain things happening a certain way. Like we were told that
Mhm.
all of your dreams are going to come true. And if you just like, I'd love for you to talk about that, the lottery thing, because I feel like you have such good stuff to talk about with that.
Mhm. I will, but continue your
Okay.
because there was something there on that thread of what did you call that? Illusions of hope
No,
or
you said that.
okay.
I just, yeah, the pot of gold. I felt like, at Bethel, it was always like more breakthrough and everybody's going to get healed and God wants you to be rich and, just constant messaging that kept you just, yeah, and like plugged into these.
Yeah. Treadmill thing.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so you're like going along and like the whole influence and favor and promotion, like you're going to be, God wants to give you favor and promote you
Oh my
and
gosh.
all
Yeah.
that. So again, there's all these strings, right? That are like constantly pulling you down this road. And I say false hope because I'm like, after we've lived a little life, like life happens, rain
Yeah.
falls on, everybody. The sun comes out and the rain falls. And it's like after you live little bit of life, you realize that like crap happens and
Yeah.
things don't work out and people leave and our dreams fall apart. And then it's like, right, you're fed all this false hope and it leads to disillusionment,
Disillusionment. Yeah.
you know? And
For
it
sure.
leaves you feeling like, what did I do wrong? Right? Because you're taught if you do
Yeah.
A, B, and C, you're
Hey.
going to get D. If
Yeah.
you pull the slot machine,
Hmm.
God's going to give you $1 million. If you sow seeds of money, you're going to get a blessing. If you pray with faith, this
Yeah.
person's going to get healed. And then you realize you do all that
Hmm.
and you still don't get the thing. And I think that was a big like eye-opening experience for us to realize how much false hope there was in those types of messages that led really to like our shipwreck, you know?
Hmm.
Any thoughts on
Tons,
that?
tons, tons and
That was
tons.
a lot of words.
I mean, I can talk about the lottery, the slot machine. I mean, but let me just say this first, like back to the whole future deal.
Yeah.
Um, I had not heard of future faking
Yeah, talk about that.
until recently, and I didn't come up with that term. I don't know who did, but it's a term that's been circulated amongst quite a few of us who've been involved in trying to help people and help ourselves recover from the IHOP deal, right? And so the future faking of there are some common themes that we see in high control, toxic faith environments. Okay. And one of those themes is you have a very persuasive, charismatic, not charismatic in the religious sense, but a very personality driven, charismatic leader or a
Yes.
select few of leaders at the top who are extremely, extremely adept and gifted at motivating people to get behind a cause. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, is that a God given gift? Probably. Does God, you know, gift people with the ability to motivate people? Yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at the disruptors of business in our lifetime, like Steve Jobs and people like him who, they had an ability to cast visions and create things that didn't exist before.
Yeah.
So I'm not knocking that, but what I'm trying to point out is there's a common theme and thread where you have a leader like that or a group of leaders who are very persuasive.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other theme is you have this mission. You have some type of like very, grandiose mission where if get on board with this mission and be a
Yes. Oh
part
my
of something
gosh.
bigger to
Yeah.
change the world,
Change the world. That's
change the
it.
world.
Yeah.
And in the IHOP world, to be specific, the whole prophetic history, if you're familiar with it, was a narrative. It was a very grand narrative that has now been largely debunked. Um, but it was a way to get thousands upon thousands of young people on board with this vision that was
Mm,
very exciting and very, mysterious. And, I'm promised like this amazing destiny. And, incidentally, that kind of stuff is talked about in the Bible. It's just that it's like that was taken to a very unhealthy
yeah.
level. Bethel did the same thing, even though it looked different, right? And so there's the pot of gold you talked about is it's like I mean, it is really like a spiritual Disneyland, at Bethel, where there are no problems. Like there actually is no room for problems.
Yeah. We see
I
that.
mean,
Yeah.
people have problems, but we can make the problems go away.
There's a spiritual answer slot machine for every problem.
Yeah. So
Cha-ching.
case in point, back to the slot
Yeah.
machine deal. It occurred to me years after leaving Bethel, and being that I am a accountant and deal with financial matters every day, it occurred to me over a period of time. I look back on our time at Bethel and I thought about the offering
Oh my gosh, I
declaration.
love when you talk about this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead.
And every service, I'm probably not gonna remember
I'm
it word
laughing
for
because
word.
it's so horrible. Go ahead.
Um, okay, so how did it start? Uh,
I don't remember estates. Uh,
raises and bonuses,
yeah,
uh, gifts and surprises,
finding money.
finding money, debts paid off, blessings increase, estates and inheritances, rebates and returns,
Oh my
checks
gosh.
in the mail. I'm not getting it in order. There's a different order to it, but then there's this declaration at the end where you're thanking God for all the blessings and increase. Now, does God want to bless people? Sure, I think so. Does God bless everybody financially? No.
Yeah.
No, he doesn't. Or put another way, do people not have money because they don't work? I mean, the Bible actually says if you don't work, you won't eat. Now, I don't mean to say that we shouldn't help people or we
Yeah.
shouldn't donate to help people. I absolutely believe in that. But to think that there's this magical slot I can pull by declaring something vocally while I give money to the church, no less, is an absolute farce. It's actually backwards. Think about this logically. While we're making the offering declaration, people are going to the front of the church to drop off money in the bucket.
Yeah.
So actually, while I'm making that declaration, I just became poorer.
Okay, but like,
I'm not knocking donating to
yeah.
good causes in the kingdom of God. You know I believe in that,
Oh yeah.
and you believe in that.
Yes.
But what I am knocking is a practice that exploits people financially,
Yes. Yeah.
and on top of that, it convinces people to believe that by me standing up and making a declaration and writing a check or running my credit card to donate to your church, that I'm going to be richer. I'm going to be
Yes.
more wealthy. And actually, as it happens, the whole concept of quote unquote kingdom wealth is not in the Bible.
Absolutely. It's
It's
such
not in the
a
Bible.
false teaching. I'm just going to call it out. It is a false teaching, and it took us a while because we had to we went through Bethel, and then we went to our culty environment, high control group in Texas that was completely centered around
It
wealth.
was that on
It was
steroids.
all about that. And we had to come out of that, and we learned some really hard lessons through that. But yes. And I think you forgot this part. Like you said this on John Collins' podcast about the declarations. When you're declaring inheritances, will you say that part?
Estates and
What does
inheritances,
that
right.
mean when you're doing that?
So I remember standing up and saying that, with everybody else, estates and inheritances sounds really good. But you know what that means? An estate is a legal entity that is created when a person dies. And an inheritance is when a an asset or a piece of property transfers ownership from the owner who has now died to the person that the owner of the property, the decedent, stated they wanted the property to go to after they died. So when you're
So
standing up,
essentially,
I'm standing up in church declaring this stuff. We're actually declaring we want people to die so that they can give us their money.
it's absurd when you think about when you said that. I was like blown away. I'm like, you're right. We were literally
But yet,
calling on.
but yet, Bethel also taught us that God raises the dead.
Oh my-
So let me see. This is my logical anal mind coming out right now, and
uh,
I'm doing this on purpose because I want to call to light the thinking behind this. Okay,
yeah.
so what if I stand up and I declare estates and inheritances as somebody dies and I'm there in their will, right? And I inherit a piece of real estate. Well, wouldn't Bethel want me to go pray for that person to be raised from the dead? What happens from a legal standpoint when a person that's passed away gets raised from the dead and the assets that they have bequeathed to the heir? I'm just asking the question. It's the point of ridiculity, but I'm serious.
Sorry, I'm laughing because it is
Anyway,
really ridiculous. Like And you
Yeah.
may not agree. Again,
And,
like
wait, let me say this. I actually believe that God raises the dead, though. That's the
yeah,
crazy part. It's in the Bible, but
yeah,
anyway, I'm just trying to highlight the stuff in here that doesn't make sense.
yeah,
It logically, it doesn't make
yeah.
sense. And
And
somebody's gonna say, "Well, hey, faith isn't logical."
okay, yeah.
Okay, maybe not, but
But it's the point of taking, right, cherry picking these scriptures and ideas that sound really good to us, and making it like a spiritual statement, making it a part of our faith practice when it's like, again, regardless of where you're at, but if you're right trying to follow the scriptures and follow the life of Jesus, I mean, he had a lot of teachings about money, and they were not about kingdom wealth.
kingdom
They
wealth.
were not about obtaining wealth. I'm pretty sure, and we're not against people having wealth. I'm
Absolutely not.
like we're business owners. Like I
Yeah.
believe like if you have a business, like make money,
Yes.
do work hard, grow.
Absolutely.
Like I'm
Yes.
not against wealth. I just think I don't know. That's a whole nother episode. I have a lot of opinions about
Yeah.
ministry and money, but
Yeah.
we need really need to do an episode on that. But it's just the idea that we're like cherry picking, right? And we're not critically thinking through this stuff. Like
Mhm.
where are you getting the basis from, like, a couple, like, Old Testament
Solomon, I think,
scriptures
probably.
about, like I remember one was like, "Oh, the wealth of the nations will be brought to you," and I took that to mean, "Oh god, you're gonna bring me all this money." And now I'm like, "That's so ridiculous." Like, he was talking to Israel, like, he wasn't saying like, "Oh, you're my believer, so you're owed millions of dollars, and I'm gonna drop it into
Yeah.
your lap," you know?
Yeah,
So
and then,
it's
like and then the whole by extension of that, like, we bought into the concept of, "Oh, we need to become wealthy so we can give
oh
more."
my gosh, yes.
But see, here's the thing with that. If you read the parable of the woman that gave the mite or what it
Yes.
was like a mite, I think it was, but we would call it like a penny. It wouldn't even be a penny in nowadays, or in that made 0 sense. In today's money, that would be worth less than a penny. That's what I'm trying to say, right? So you got a woman who goes in to give her last, it's like her last little coin that she had. And Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, she's given more than all y'all."
Yeah.
And so the moral of the story, I think, is it's not a question of how much you give, i.e., the amount. It's the percentage of what you have that you give,
Yeah.
right? So if all you have is a little bitty, tiny, nothing piece of like a penny or less than a penny, and you give all of that, like you've given 100% of what you have. Conversely, if you have $1 million and you give 50,000, that's way less from a percentage standpoint. Now, I don't think it's about like trying to divide up percentages and stuff like that. That's kind of weird. But
You're
the
just
point,
making the point,
I'm
yeah.
just making the point that it's the heart behind it. It's not the amount,
Right.
like, so to tell yourself, hey, I want to become wealthy so I can give more to the kingdom. Like
Yeah,
that actually doesn't make any,
it
I
doesn't.
mean, if you believe that, then you would give, you know, a large percentage of your
Most of your income.
right
And then it's like
currently.
going back to like, do I want to work this hard to give away most
Yeah, I
maybe
mean,
you do. Maybe you do. And I want to hold space
yeah, for
for
sure.
these are our thoughts and processes, and you don't have to share our opinion, but this is our
Yeah,
deconstruction. This has been our like disentangling from toxic. Like
yeah.
yeah, and
Well,
there's
and two, like just how we feel like we prefer to give to people in need rather than to a church,
right. Yeah,
you
we
know?
don't have a church, and that's actually been really fun and
Yeah,
freeing to know that like money is going directly to somebody, yeah, who is in need. I think that that's, you know, what it was supposed to be, right? You came and put the money at the feet of people who needed it and distribute it that way.
right,
And instead of paying for, I'm sorry, I put this in the group, the $200 million building. I'm
right,
like, oh, students are starving and they don't have food, but please build a larger building. That's
right.
just my opinion. That's how I
Yeah,
feel about it. But
yeah, I agree with you on that for
um,
sure.
and again, this isn't to be critical. I feel like I always need to like preface that. Like
But yeah, it is though, isn't it? I mean, what's wrong with being critical?
True, I guess, yeah, I guess
We've been we've been conditioned to not be critical.
yeah.
I think probably what you're
What
saying.
I
Are
mean
you
is,
saying
like,
like
the whole we're not t yeah, and I guess I don't need to say that. We've said that already.
yeah, I mean, this is just us trying to
Yeah,
make sense of some of the craziness.
yeah,
Um, and what's so hard too is like I look at Bethel and I actually still love the people at Bethel. I love them and I miss things about Bethel. I miss the worship, at Bethel.
yeah.
I miss the community. We had a great community. I miss all that stuff. It's not like that's part of what's hard about this is like there's good stuff too that you miss.
Yeah.
I mean, I miss having that community and stuff, but I don't miss other things.
Yeah, it's that process, and then we've talked about this before of, like, parceling out. That's what I call it, at least. Like, for me, seeing the pieces that were good and helpful and, like, really beneficial in our life, and then kind of, like, right, sorting out these other pieces that are like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't think that's right." And
Yeah.
I think what, like, I wanna talk about for a minute is, like, bringing this back to the critical thinking, and, like, you and I were talking about this. I'm like, it's so crazy with all this stuff that's coming out. Is like you have the facts now. Like Bethel
Right.
has made a statement about Shawn and said he is doing all this stuff. The report is out with Mike Bickle. I mean, 17 people just from him, and that's not including all the other victims
And
from
some
other,
and
yeah,
some people were left out of the
yeah.
report is what I heard.
And then, okay, Todd Bentley at Morningstar and all of his history that's and their lawsuits. And like, okay, the people that are still in these places, like you can show people the facts. Like, here are the actual facts. And they're like, no, it can't be true. I trust them. They're good people.
Yeah.
And so it's a big problem. And I think that, yeah, we live in a time where you can actually have the facts, the cold hard facts about something, and the mind control
Yeah.
and the culture of honor stuff and the look at what I'm saying, not what I'm doing type leadership, the
Yeah.
narcissistic type control. People, it's like the brain, like that part of your brain is not online, and you are literally convinced of what you want to believe, right? About those people. And
Yeah,
I
it's willful blindness.
I feel like it's a big problem right now. And that, like, it scares me. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're living in a time where you can have the facts and you can still choose to go along with, like, people who are doing evil. Like,
It's crazy.
and yeah, like to me, I would like Morningstar. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, if you have children, I would never attend there. Like
No.
or
The
IHOP again.
school or
I'm
any of
like,
that. Yeah.
it's they are telling you they are not gonna protect you. Like they don't care. Their actions, okay? Their actions are showing you they don't care. And I just want to say something too, like Chris Valentin he posted some posts
Yeah.
last week that he took down, and it really bothered me. We talked about it a bit in the process group and people had different opinions on it, which is fine, but he used the example. This is right after the IHOP report comes out. Like, we know Mike Bickle has been predatory and, like, just horrific Machiavellian type manipulation over his victims. He had the audacity to post about David, like using the example of David. Well, David fell and
Oh my
God
gosh.
restored him. And who else? Moses was a murderer. And
Didn't he also talk about Judas?
yeah, and Judas. And I'm like thinking, I don't think those were the example to follow. I think those were the examples of, like, that was actually a really bad, bad idea. But like, I was like, why would he use those examples? It told me how I saw that was like, oh, he's telling us what he actually believes about these leaders. He's telling us that he believes that they should be in power because look at how God used these other people who did horrible things. And I'm like,
Hmm.
they're telling us, right?
Yeah.
They're telling us what they believe, and people can't see that. And so I guess that's hard for me.
It's so hard.
I'm
Oh my
like,
gosh, it's
I
so hard.
cringe because I'm like, oh, I don't want to know what we're gonna have, what you might have to go through, what people might have to. go through, and I think that's what's been challenging in the process group. I've realized, and just talking with people, like, if you haven't experienced spiritual abuse or
Yeah.
harm or narcissistic abuse or religious trauma, or you haven't been a victim of something like this, there is an element that you just really are not going to understand.
Yeah.
And
It's very
and
difficult to
so I
understand.
cringe because I know these systems are very toxic and unhealthy. And I know it's just a matter of time. I'm not saying everyone's going to be a victim, and I'm not like speaking that over anybody. I pray that nothing happens to you,
Right.
but I am nervous for what might like play out in these ministries and the harm
Mm.
and more um collateral damage that is going to need to take place for people to wake up. And so I guess
Yeah.
this is me saying, please use your brain.
Use caution.
It's You don't have to see the gold in every leader. You are to look at their life and their actions. You're to question things. It's healthy. If you don't question the people that are over you ever, that's a problem. Like, we don't agree on everything.
Yeah.
You should disagree with us. I mean, not should, but like disagree with us. You're like, oh, I don't actually believe that, or that's healthy. So if you're at places like Bethel or in a leadership and you're just like enamored and there's like, oh, I believe everything you're
Yeah.
saying and everything you're saying is right and everything you do is right, that's a sign that you're maybe not critically thinking or really thinking through. Like, sit and think about, well, what do I think about this?
Yeah.
What is the,
What do I
if you're,
feel?
yeah, what do I feel? What is my body like?
Yeah.
You talked about like your body. I don't know if I want to get into, I've talked about it before, but your body holds emotional information and it's actually a warning signal. I think God designed our bodies to warn us. 80% of your emotions are held in your body and go up to your brain, not your brain to your body. So
Mm.
it's actually happening in your body before it becomes a thought, 80% of the time.
What about the rest of where's the 20%?
20% is like brain to body, but like if you're
Okay.
feeling anxious, 80% of the time it's somewhere in your body. And that's a
Mm.
warning signal. Those are warning signals to pay attention to. So, yeah, I could go on about that, but like
Yeah.
our bodies can tell when something's off, but our mind likes to go, "Oh no, not that person. They
Mhm.
would never." And so you
That's kinda what I
shut
was
that
talking about
down.
earlier.
Yeah.
You've got, like, these competing forces
Yes.
inside, like this conflicting thing going on.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, um,
That was a lot. What do you want to say? Like I kind of stole
no,
the
yeah, I don't know. I was just looking to see if we left anything out off of the list of stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I think that more this is what I was gonna say too, like, just being kind to yourself, like, because 'cause
yeah.
we're all in a process, like, there was a time in the not too distant past that you and I both still were very, you know,
Yeah.
we thought Bethel was like the best thing ever. And I mean, like I said, there's still things about Bethel that I appreciate and love, but we had to have our own journey, just like
Yeah.
everybody. So
True.
I think being kind, like just encouraging people to be kind to yourself, regardless of where you are in your journey. And like, yeah, it can be scary though to ask questions, particularly if you've been so invested in a movement like this for a long time, or even
Yeah.
if it hasn't been many, many years, maybe it's only been a year or 2, that's still a lot to invest. Like, you literally invest your life into this.
Yeah.
And so it's a big undertaking to even consider that something could be off.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, and I don't think it's something you just choose, right? Like I think you just, like for us, like stuff happened in our life and we started
Yeah, we
like,
didn't really much have a choice, did we? Because
no.
it was
Yeah.
it was such a, caustic, toxic, and poisonous experience that it forced us into a fork in the road
Yeah.
that we had to make a decision
Yeah.
as to whether we were gonna stay or leave, and we chose to leave, thankfully. Um, but, for other people, it might be more gradual where it's not like you have this momentous, you know series of circumstances that force the issue. It could just be one step in front of the other for many years, and then eventually you're like, "Oh my gosh, I've been in this for 15 years, and I'm realizing that it's not all I thought it was cracked up to be."
Yeah. It's been really interesting to hear people's process. Yeah, how different it is where people get to where they are.
Yeah.
And I think what you said too, like I remember years ago, oh my gosh, even just 5 years ago, the kinds of conversations that we're having now, I would have been like, this is wrong. That's horrible. Can't talk like that. Like I would have just been so offended and horrified
Mm.
at, I would have never imagined myself talking about these
Yeah,
things the way that we do.
we would have considered this very dishonoring.
Very dishonoring. So yeah, we've had our own process. And I think even when I was at Bethel, like we had such a good experience while we were
Yeah,
there.
true.
I didn't disagree with anything. I thought everything was great. I was like, this is the
Right.
most wonderful. Yes, Bill.
Mhm.
Yes, Chris. Yes. Like everything I just,
Yeah.
agreed with. And so yeah, I appreciate you saying you're kind. You're like, be kind to yourself. Like, yeah. And you don't have to arrive where we do, this is just it's part of our own healing and process. And I guess I feel a responsibility and out of care, I'm like, if
Yeah.
I can prevent other people from experiencing harm like we have and save them like a little bit of like years by sharing these things, like I want to do
100%.
that. I'm like, hey, like, just, so I think that's my heart behind it is not to try to get people to think like we do, like, you need to think like we do,
Right.
but more like sounding the bell, like, think about it and consider. And
Mhm.
you're probably feeling some things. You're probably discerning, and in your body, you're noticing things. And that is a way I think I'll just say God speaks to us, or just a way like your intuition, right? I think we all are born with an intuition and an inner wisdom. I know to some people that sounds like really new age, but I just do. Regardless of whether you know God or not. Like
Mhm.
I think that is built in our system. And
Yeah.
so I think if we get really good at paying attention, um we're going to notice that stuff and
Mhm.
be more aware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
I don't know.
That's good. Well,
Is that where we pause
I
today?
think so. I think we're close to
Yeah.
an hour. Let's see. 57 minutes.
Yeah. All
So
right.
hopefully y'all found this engaging and helpful, and maybe it, caused you to think about a few things or help you process. But we're just trying to have a conversation and, frankly, help ourselves. And
Yeah.
hopefully, because it's been a lot of craziness, man.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it helps you as well, like work through your process wherever you're at in that process. So we appreciate you being here and listening and watching, and we will see you next time. If you want to reach us, we do have an email. It's gritinthewild@gmail.com. So GRITINTHEWILD@gmail.com. Or feel free to leave us a comment. We'd
Yep.
be happy to dialogue with you. So thanks again. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.